There were 20 of them. 20 of the most decorated, most feared, most expensive bodyguards on the continent. Former special forces. Ex-intelligence. Men whose resumes included conflicts in places that do not appear on tourist maps. Men with scars they never explained and instincts honed over decades of living in the space between danger and survival. And in 4 minutes flat, every single one of them missed it. She did not. She was 23 years old. She earned the equivalent of $9 an hour. Her uniform was 2 sizes too large because the laundry had not come back yet. She had a bruise on her left shoulder from the mop handle she carried every morning across the marble floors of the Imperiale Grand Hotel in Rome. She had $42 in her bank account and a mother on a hospital waiting list. She was the maid assigned to the 14th floor. Welcome to the family. If you are new here, hit subscribe and ring the bell right now. We tell stories that will stop you mid-scroll every single week. And if you are a returning member, you already know. Settle in. This one is special. Her name was Nadia Ferrante. And before the night was over, she would save the life of the most dangerous man in Europe, unravel a conspiracy 2 years in the making, and bring down a man who had never once been touched by consequence. Not once. Until her. This is not a story about luck. This is a story about what happens when the world overlooks the wrong woman. Raphael Cani did not sleep the way ordinary men sleep. He closed his eyes for 4 hours each night as a biological obligation, nothing more. While other men surrendered to dreams, Raphael catalogued, calculated, and anticipated. He had done this since he was 16 years old and understood that the world was not a fair place. It was a chessboard, and the men who survived were the ones who saw 12 moves ahead. At 42, he was the undisputed head of the Cani Alliance, a network of legitimate shipping, construction, and private capital stretching from Palermo to Krakow. Officially, he was a developer and investor. Unofficially, he was the reason 3 European finance ministers returned his calls on weekends. He had not reached this position by being careless, which was why his head of security, the granite-faced Colonel Enzo Ricci, had arranged the summit at the Imperiale Grand with military precision. The hotel had been swept for devices twice. The guest roster had been vetted 3 times. The service staff files had been reviewed. The 20 bodyguards rotated in overlapping shifts, covering every corridor, stairwell, and service entrance on the 14th floor. Enzo had left nothing to chance. He believed. Nadia Ferrante had been at the Imperiale Grand for 7 months. She had taken the job because the university scholarship office had made a clerical error that revoked her second-year chemistry grant. The correction would take 18 months to process. Her mother had been placed on a dialysis waiting list. The bills did not wait for bureaucratic errors to resolve themselves. So Nadia cleaned rooms. She was, by every visible measure, invisible. Guests moved around her the way water moves around stone. Her supervisor, a thin, anxious man named Marco, noticed her only when a room ran behind schedule. She had learned over 7 months to move like water herself, filling the space, completing the task, vanishing without trace. She did not mind invisibility. She had always been a watcher. Chemistry taught her that. Everything left a signature. Everything told a story. The trick was learning what to look for. On the evening of November 14th, Nadia was assigned the turn-down service for the VIP suites on the 14th floor. She rolled her cart into the corridor and registered the men immediately. Hard-faced, controlled, eyes moving in practice sweeps rather than the casual glancing of ordinary people. She had seen hotel security before. Not like this. Not 20 of them. Someone important was here. Not your business, she told herself. Clean the rooms. Go home. Room 1406. Empty. Done. Room 1407. Occupied. Come back later. Room 1408. She knocked. No answer. Master key. Shoulder against the door. The suite was magnificent, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the amber sprawl of Rome at night. She moved to the nightstand to prepare the linens. And that was when she saw it. The water glass. Room service had placed it perfectly. Chilled, sparkling water. A wedge of lemon. Immaculate presentation. Nadia would have walked straight past it. But the lemon had a ring. A faint crystalline residue on the inside of the glass, just above the waterline.
She stopped. She leaned in.
And the chemistry student in her, the part that had spent 2 years studying organic compounds and toxic reaction signatures, fired like a struck match. That residue. She recognized the pattern from a second-year seminar on detection chemistry. A case study on aconitine, a plant-derived alkaloid, colorless, nearly odorless in trace amounts, and lethally effective at doses smaller than a grain of salt. The crystalline drying pattern was distinctive to anyone who had studied it closely. Someone had been in this room. Someone had poisoned the water. Nadia's hands went cold. She stood completely still and did what she always did under pressure. She calculated. 20 trained bodyguards outside. The importance of whoever was staying here. The glass on the nightstand. What it meant. Walk away, said one voice inside her. These men are dangerous, said another. And then a third voice, quiet and absolute. If you walk away, someone dies tonight. Still with us? This is where it gets real. If this story already has your heart racing, hit that like button right now. It takes 2 seconds, and it helps this community find stories like this one. We are building something here together. Now, back to Nadia. She walked out into the corridor. The nearest bodyguard, a wall of a man with a shaved head and an earpiece, turned toward her with the automatic suspicion of someone paid to be suspicious of everyone. I need to speak to whoever is in charge, Nadia said. He looked her over. Gray uniform. Cleaning cart. Nobody. Go back to work. The water glass in 1408 has been poisoned. Silence. The guard's eyes sharpened by precisely 1 degree. Excuse me? The water glass on the nightstand. The crystalline residue is consistent with aconitine. 7 words. The water in that room will kill. Whoever drinks from that glass tonight will be dead before morning. The guard stared at her for 3 full seconds. Then he touched his earpiece. Colonel Enzo Ricci arrived in 90 seconds. He was compact, gray-haired, and moved with the economy of a man who had spent decades in places where hesitation costs lives. He looked at Nadia the way men always looked at her, through her almost, before correcting themselves. Explain, he said.
She explained.
The crystalline ring. The aconitine signature. The drying pattern at room temperature. The university seminar. The case study she had memorized because she found it fascinating, and because her memory worked that way, it held on to things. Enzo's face remained perfectly still throughout. When she finished, he said, How do I know you are not the one who put it there? Because if I had, Nadia said evenly, I would not still be standing in this corridor.
A pause.
Then Enzo turned to the guard and said 2 words. Get Raphael. Raphael Connie appeared at the door of Suite 1408 and saw Nadia the way he had been trained to see potential threats. He assessed her in under 2 seconds. Gray uniform. Cleaning cart. Bruise on the shoulder. The posture of someone who had learned to take up less space. And then something shifted. He looked again. Really looked. The way a man who has spent his life reading people suddenly realizes he almost read this one entirely wrong. Is it real? He asked Enzo, not looking away from her. The lab team needs an hour to confirm. But her description was technically accurate. In significant detail. Raphael walked fully into the corridor and closed the suite door behind him. He was taller than she expected. No jewelry. Eyes that were dark and completely still. The eyes of a man who had mastered the art of giving nothing away. Your name, he said.
Nadia.
Nadia Ferrante. You are a maid. For now, she said, and immediately regretted it. But the corner of his mouth moved by a fraction. For now, he repeated. How do you know about aconitine? She told him. The chemistry program. The scholarship error. The mother in Naples. The bills that did not care about bureaucratic timelines. He listened without interrupting. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then, go home tonight, Nadia Ferrante. Leave your number with Enzo. I will be in touch. About what?
A job.
A real one. He looked at her, fully, finally, for one more moment. 20 men on this floor. Not one of them caught what you found in 30 seconds. I do not hire by rank. I hire by results. He turned and walked away. Nadia stood in the corridor with her cleaning cart and understood that something had changed. She just did not yet know how much. The lab confirmed it within 40 minutes. Aconitine, 50 milligrams in the sparkling water. 5 times the lethal dose for an adult male. Whoever had done this had not been aiming for ambiguity. They had wanted certainty. Enzo reviewed the security footage from the service elevator. A man in a hotel uniform, face angled precisely away from each camera, had entered Suite 1408 on a key card that should not have functioned, a cloned card, one that had exploited a 30-second gap during the shift changeover. 30 seconds. The same 30-second gap that every one of the 20 bodyguards had been briefed to monitor. Enzo traced the card clone through the hotel maintenance logs. A contractor hired 6 weeks earlier for electrical servicing, whose background check had been processed by a third-party agency. An agency that resolved, through 4 layers of shell companies, to a registered office in Geneva. Owned by a man named Dario Falcone. Raphael said nothing when Enzo gave him the name. He simply sat still for a long moment, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop. Dario Falcone was his oldest business partner, his co-founder, the man who had stood beside him at his father's graveside and wept real tears. He was also, Raphael had suspected for 8 months, quietly engineering a takeover of the alliance, accumulating board proxies, pressuring minority partners, building legal architecture in the background. But this was not a boardroom maneuver. This was a burial. 3 days later, a car arrived at the entrance of Nadia's building in the Testaccio neighborhood. It was not a modest car. Enzo stepped out looking mildly uncomfortable with the assignment. He held an envelope and a garment bag. "Mr. Connie would like to speak with you," he said when Nadia opened the door on the chain. He could have called. He does not call. He sends. Inside the envelope was a handwritten letter, which surprised her. She had expected typed instructions from a PA. Instead, a full page of dense, precise handwriting. It said, in essence, "Your scholarship has been restored. Your mother's dialysis treatments have been paid for 2 years in advance. These are corrections to situations that should never have existed. Separately, I have a proposal if you're willing to hear it." She went. Raphael's office occupied the top floor of a building that looked conservative from the street and astonishing from within. He was at the window when she was brought in. He turned when she entered. "Sit," he said. Then immediately, "Thank you." "For what?" "For not walking away. Most people would have." "I know," she said. "That frightened me more than you did." He sat across from her. He had a file open on his desk. She realized with a start it was a file about her. Top of your cohort before the funding collapsed. Specialization in analytical chemistry and trace toxicology. Your thesis proposal was on compound identification in complex environments. "You read my thesis proposal?" "I read everything." He leaned forward. "Dario Falcone will try again," Raphael said. "Not only against me. He is systematically compromising this organization. He has informants inside, people I have trusted for years. I need someone who has no history here. Someone who can see what others have stopped seeing because they have been staring at the same picture too long. You want a chemist to investigate your organization. I want someone with your kind of mind. You notice something in 30 seconds that 20 trained professionals missed in 48 hours. I do not need more force. I need precision." Nadia was quiet. She thought about her mother, about the seminar she had loved, about standing in that corridor knowing, absolutely knowing she was right. "I have conditions," she said. Something behind his eyes shifted. Almost respect. "Name them." "I finished my degree. Non-negotiable." "Agreed." "I do not touch anything illegal. I work on the legitimate business only." "Agreed." "And when I find your informants, when not if, you do not act until I have documented everything properly. No shortcuts. We do this by the book, or we hand it to the authorities." A longer pause. "You are asking me to trust a process." "I am asking you to trust me," Nadia said. "Which is different." He studied her face for a long moment. Outside, Rome hummed.
"Done," Raphael said.
He extended his hand. Nadia shook it. Nadia spent her first 2 weeks observing. She asked for access to nothing sensitive. She walked the offices, attended briefings, ate lunch in the staff canteen, and listened to conversations not directed at her, which were always the most informative.
She built a map in her mind.
Not the organization chart, she had that already. A map of pressure. Who was afraid of what? Who left the room to take certain calls? Who had recently bought something they should not be able to afford? On the 12th day, she brought her findings to Raphael. 3 names. 3 members of the inner operations team whose behavioral patterns indicated external pressure. How certain, he asked. Very certain on 2. The 3rd, I need another week. What do you need from me? Organize a briefing routine about the shipping route restructuring. Include all 3 names, but share slightly different versions of the route details with each of them. Subtle variations. If Falcone's team moves on any of those routes in the next 10 days, we will know which variation they received, and we will know exactly who gave it to them. Enzo, standing by the window, turned slowly. That is a canary trap. Chemistry is not the only thing I studied, Nadia said. Raphael looked at her for a long moment. Do it, he said. It took 6 days. Falcone's logistics team rerouted a competitor tender to intercept a specific cargo corridor, the corridor matching exactly the variation given to a man named Luca Bernardi, Raphael's head of European operations. Nadia brought the documentation to Raphael at 10 in the evening. She had been in the office for 14 hours. She placed the printed records on his desk in a precise stack: wire transfers, timestamps, the 3 briefing variations, and Bernardi's communication logs. Luca has been providing operational intelligence to Falcone for at least 14 months, she said. He also facilitated the access that allowed Falcone's contractor to obtain the cloned key card for Suite 1408. He was the inside man. Raphael went very still. Luca was at my father's funeral, he said. It was not an operational detail. It was just a man, for one unguarded moment, grieving. I know, Nadia said. He stood after a long silence. What do you need? Call the Financial Crimes Unit. I have already organized the evidence package. If you hand them this, Falcone goes to prison, properly legally. Bernardi cooperates for a reduced sentence. You get the testimony that dismantles everything Falcone built. And Falcone? He loses the shell companies, the board proxies, the capital base, everything he tried to take from you, except through a courtroom on the public record, permanently. Raphael looked at the stack of documents, then at Nadia. You know what most people in your position would have done with this information, the leverage it represents. I know, she said, but you are handing it to the authorities. That was always the plan, Nadia said. I told you from the beginning. We do it by the book. He picked up his phone. He made the call. Dario Falcone was arrested on a Thursday morning. He was at breakfast in his house in Lugano. By all accounts, he was calm. Men who have never faced consequences rarely panic at first encounter. The panic comes later, in the cell, when the silence closes in. Luca Bernardi cooperated fully. His testimony mapped the entire operation: the board vote manipulation, the contractor network, the cloned access card, the aconitine sourced from a contact in Prague. The case file was immaculate. Nadia had made sure of that. In the weeks that followed, Raphael restructured the security division, overhauled the vetting process, and made changes the old guard found uncomfortable and the new generation found long overdue. Nadia went back to university. She returned as a part-time senior consultant to the Alliance's legitimate operations, a role she had negotiated herself. The schedule, the title, the salary, which was extraordinary for a 23-year-old who had been mopping floors 4 months earlier. Nobody at the university knew.
She was just a student again.
Invisible in the best possible way. It was January. Rome was cold and gray and pressing. Nadia was in the university library at 11 at night, finishing her thesis proposal, the revised version, the one she had been building toward for 2 years. Surrounded by papers and cold coffee and the specific silence of a library after everyone sensible has gone home. Her phone buzzed. A message from Raphael. No greeting. Are you still in the library? You left your annotated toxicology paper in the office. She looked at the screen. How do you know I am in the library? I know where you go when you are finishing something important. Always the same table. Third floor. Away from the windows. She looked up. He was standing at the end of her row of stacks. Coat still on from outside. A folder in his hand. Her annotated paper. You did not have to come in person, she said. No, he agreed. He placed the folder on her desk. He glanced at her open thesis draft. She could tell from the way his eyes moved. He said nothing about what he read. He sat down, uninvited, in the chair across from her. How does the proposal end? He asked. I have not written the conclusion yet. What will you argue? That trace detection is not only a chemistry problem, it is a pattern recognition problem. That most forensic protocols are too rigid to catch what they're actually looking for. That the methodology needs to account for environment, not just compound. He was quiet for a moment. You are going to change something, he said finally, in how people think about this. Nadia looked at him. Over 4 months of working together, she had learned to read the rare moments when the controlled exterior became briefly, almost accidentally, human. This was one of them. Someone helped me understand that visibility is a choice, she said, not a condition. He held her gaze for a moment longer than was strictly professional. Finish your thesis, he said, standing. I will be here when you are done. He walked away between the stacks. Nadia watched him go. Then she turned back to her page and wrote the first line of her conclusion. Outside, Rome was cold and gray and ancient and indifferent. Inside, under the warm cone of the library lamp, a woman who had spent most of her life being looked through began to write the words that would, in time, change everything. Because that is what she had learned from a water glass and a bruise and 30 seconds of courage. The most powerful person in any room is not the one everyone watches. It is the one everyone overlooks. Dario Falcone was convicted of conspiracy, attempted murder, and fraud. He is serving 23 years. Luca Bernardi cooperated fully. He received a reduced sentence and has not been seen at any industry event since his release. Colonel Enzo Ricci restructured the Alliance's entire security protocol. He has stated publicly, on more than one occasion, that the finest hire Raphael ever made arrived pushing a cleaning cart. Nadia Ferrante completed her chemistry degree with distinction. Her thesis on trace compound detection in complex environments was published in a peer-reviewed journal and cited in 19 subsequent forensic papers. She and Raphael Cani took considerably longer to say what they both already knew. But some conclusions are worth waiting for. And some people are worth every single second of the wait. You made it to the end. And that means you are one of us. Nadia's story is for everyone who has ever been the smartest person in the room and been treated like the furniture. It is for every person who was told to be quiet, to be invisible, to know their place, and who held the answer the whole room was searching for. That is this community. That is who we tell these stories for. Like this video if Nadia gave you chills. It costs you nothing and means everything to us. Subscribe and ring the bell. New stories every week. You do not want to miss what is coming next. Comment below. Have you ever been overlooked and turned out to be exactly what was needed?
Tell us.
This family listens. Until next time, stay sharp, stay seen. The quietest person in the room is often writing the ending. Welcome to the family.